is Dr. Hertz-Picciotto, and please join me in welcoming.
Hi, thanks again for taking time out of your busy schedules. I'm an epidemiologist, and my slides will be appearing in a moment.
Well, we could make use of the time. Does anybody have any questions about these things? I put up a controversial list up there with some interesting things on it. Please.
Maybe you could talk a little bit more about glutathione.
Glutathione is a sulfur compound that's the primary antioxidant throughout the whole body. And of course, the brain, as I said, needs more of it. And you have to be able to make it. You have to take up the raw material from the GI tract to have enough. And there's evidence that kids with autism don't have enough in the whole body. So if you do a blood test, you'll find low glutathione, even though it's the brain that's being most affected.
Okay. Yeah, I'm from UC Davis at the Mind Institute. I've been there for about 10 years now. We really know today that autism is caused by aberrant brain development. This is new in the sense that 20 years ago, the primary hypothesis was that it was bad parenting, cold parenting style. We know that's absolutely not true. There's plenty of evidence that this is actually biochemical, physical in the brain. What causes autism? As you've heard, genes play an important role, and there's a bunch of and also environmental factors ranging from the air we breathe, the food we eat, what we drink, the medications that we take, the household products that we apply for various reasons, and personal care products like the shampoos and the scented perfumes, colognes, and so forth. All of these things have chemicals in them. They're part of our environment. They're with us every day. Let me answer the question about whether the incidence of autism is truly rising, because this is a question that many people ask. Is it just due to better diagnosis, more awareness, that sort of thing? Well, we did some analysis in California, and this analysis would apply also similarly across the country. We looked at children born in 1990, all the way, every year, all the way up through 2001, and we looked at incidence by 5 years of age. And what we found was that there was a 7-fold rise in the incidence of autism. Now, the question is, can it be explained then by changing criteria, better diagnosis, younger age of diagnosis? And in fact, about 1/3 of it can be explained by that. And so on that red bar, it's about the first one is 1/3. That still leaves the other 2/3. Another group looked at diagnostic substitution. Maybe we used to call this mental retardation, and now we're really detecting that we realize it's autism. So that might explain another small amount of it. Maybe half of this can be explained. That's still 3.5-fold higher than what it was just 10 years, 11 years earlier. So absolutely, there is a role for these diagnostic changes, but there's also a rise that's not explained by those factors, that what's left, environmental factors. What are the environmental factors that today, in 2013, we are interested in that we think need to be looked at? So starting with environmental chemicals in air pollution and metals, this is a really high priority. And there's actually been more research done in this area over the last few years. I'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. Household products. There have been studies looking at 3 different kinds of pesticides, and each of them seems to be associated with some increase in autism among those who are exposed highly to these compounds. There are other household products like the phthalates that are in food packaging, they are in plastic toys, they are in scented products. There are the flame retardants, which are they're put in backings of carpeting, they're in the plastic casings of electronic devices. Just a plethora of different kinds of chemicals. What's in our antimicrobials? These are things that have not been well studied. There is no mandated testing for prenatal exposures and later neurodevelopmental deficits. We test for all kinds of other things: toxicity, liver toxicity, kidney toxicity, carcinogenicity. We don't test regularly for neurodevelopmental effects, particularly that are associated with prenatal exposures. I'll talk some more in a moment about nutrition and vitamins. Viruses and bacteria, the very first clues that we had about environmental influences on autism actually came from epidemics that occurred in the 1970s of rubella, and children who were congenitally exposed because their mother was infected had an extremely high rate of autistic symptoms. So we know that infections could play some role. And in fact, the thinking today is that that happens through inducing an inflammatory response in the mother, which is related to what you've just heard about, oxidative stress, and that stress is maybe the way through which these infections have influenced autism in the past. Then there's a lot of interest in these gestational kinds of conditions like obesity and metabolic conditions which may influence the mother during gestation. So we have diabetes, they may have underlying diabetes, they may have gestational diabetes induced by pregnancy, and obesity. And there's now one study which we conducted at Davis, which does show that women who fall into this category, metabolic conditions, have a higher risk of delivering a child who later develops autism. It's a finding that needs to be replicated, needs to be researched more, how that works, but it's out there. And then there's been a number of studies on fertility treatments. For example, some data coming in saying yes, others saying maybe no. Again, we need to be looking at this more carefully. Other medical interventions like fetal ultrasound. We now do this routinely, virtually every child, sometimes multiple ultrasounds. Not only that, but the dose that is delivered through the ultrasound is 8 times higher than it used to be. There was a change in the way the equipment was built in around 1992, and in fact, that's around the time when the rate started really taking off. So those and these gestational metabolic conditions are both things that have been really rising over the last 15, 20 years and absolutely need to be looked at because in parallel, that is when autism has been rising most rapidly. There is concern about medications. Some studies indicating that SSRIs, which are the kinds of medications that people, for instance, who have seizure disorders need to take, seem to be associated with higher risk of autism. So this is a really important question about the risk-benefit kind of situation here. Those women need to take those medications. Maybe we need to be looking at, is there a dose that would not put the child at higher risk and still control those conditions in the mother? Because certainly her having seizures is not good for the fetus either. And then a few other things, maternal reproductive characteristics. Let's go to the next slide. So we know genes and environment, as Dr. Deep already pointed out, it's multifactorial. These act together. And an example here, these little circles are a set of sufficient causes. And by sufficient, I mean if we take one of those factors away, you no longer have the complete circle. So you no longer have enough of an insult to overcome the natural, resilient, and adaptive mechanisms. And so that might be one set of sufficient causes on the left. On the right might be another set of sufficient causes. Depending on the individual, maybe a different set. But these are the kinds of factors that may contribute in combination. Also, again, as Dr. Deep pointed out, timing matters. So maybe you have the genetics that you've got at conception. Maybe there are nutritional factors right around that time that are really important. In fact, epigenetically, perhaps. And then maybe pesticides in the first trimester, or maybe air pollution later on. Maybe around the time of birth, there are procedures that are being used that may influence risk. Air pollution, maybe in late pregnancy, maybe early childhood. Really all the way up to the time of diagnosis, there could be factors that are tearing down that adaptive resilience that people have. Moving on, pregnancy clearly is a vulnerable time.